is Mathew and I'm 7 years old. I spent nearly a year in hospital when I was a baby, but Mum and Dad can tell you about that as I was too young to remember. I'd like to introduce my family, my brother Liam, my baby brother who is at home with Nana and Granddad, my mum Fiona, my dad and my dad. Over to you, Dad.
Good evening. Good evening. We totally support this evening and the chance to give back to a wonderful cause. We have had an affiliation with the Children's Hospital for the past 7.5 years when our middle son, Mathew, was a baby. He was transferred over when only hours old to have life-saving surgery. This was the first of 17 operations which led to a 10-month stay in hospital. Mathew has now a condition called short bowel syndrome. He was born with ileal atresia, which means that his intestine had twisted over and not developed normally. Usually it is a relatively straightforward operation to fix this with a 3 to 4 week stay in hospital. Unfortunately, in Matt's case, his intestine perforated and started dying. He went from having 2.5 metres of small intestine to just 45 centimetres. This is borderline for survival. He had an amazing team work on him, and after 3 weeks of life support, he turned a corner and started to fight back. The next 10 months were filled with ups and downs, with more surgery and specialists working on him. As you can well imagine, this had a huge impact on our family, as the hospital suddenly became our second home. Here is Liam to share some of his memories.
I was just 2 years old when Matt was born. Because he was so sick, I didn't get to hold him until he was 8 weeks old. The hospital was kind of fun as I got to hang out in the playroom and I loved to go up and down the lifts. The nurses made a fuss of me and I got to travel down to the operating theatre with Matt in his cot. They let me press the buttons to open and close the door, which is pretty cool for a 2-year-old.
As parents, our experience was somewhat different. We had to put all our trust into the medical professionals, helping out only when we were allowed. The fear of the unknown and of what was to come was a very scary place to be. Mathew seemed to take 2 steps forward and 1 step back, which at times became frustrating. The best advice we got came from the surgeon, who said that this was not going to be a sprint, but we were running a marathon, and it was going to take endurance. We vowed that we would stay positive and do whatever it took to get our way home. Parents that we had gotten to know very well during Matt's 3 weeks in intensive care weren't so lucky. Their daughter, who was the same age as Mathew, died at 6 months of age. As much as we were dealing with so much, we very quickly learned that there was always someone worse off than we were. We still had our baby.
The hospital staff became like family as we saw more of them than we saw of anybody else. We even were lucky enough to have our own hospital granny, whose name was Marlene, and she was an absolute godsend. She'd come in twice a week to sit with Mathew so that I could spend time with my other son Liam. I don't know who enjoyed it more. They both absolutely adored each other. The staff went out of their way to accommodate us and keep us informed every step of the way. We felt very involved in all that was happening with our son. We had so many different teams working with us: surgical, physio, dietitians, speech language therapists, occupational therapists, just to name a few. As parents, it was really important for us to do as much hands-on caring for our son as we could, and the nursing staff quickly saw how competent we were and let us take over some basic medical procedures, which we then had to do when we discharged and came home. Mathew went from strength to strength once he got home, meeting milestones in the normal time frame. He continues to be monitored 2 to 3 times a year at the hospital. They call him their miracle child, as he has continued to defy the odds. We look forward to these visits as we get to catch up with the staff who are like old friends. They know the journey that we've been on. When people ask us, how did we cope? The answer is simple. We just had to. Yes, it was hard, but look what we've got here to show for it. We're really lucky. We look back on our time at the hospital with such a positive experience for us. We learned what was important in life, and irrelevant things were quickly put on the back burner. We discovered strengths that we didn't know existed. We learned to trust our faith and that there was a much bigger picture in all of this. And we couldn't have done it without a fantastic group of people working behind the scenes, both the medical professionals and the volunteers, tirelessly fundraising for the good of the hospital. Together they made what was a challenging time for us all much more comfortable. Thanks for listening to our story and enjoy your evening.